Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Just Good Game Show. This particular portion is the Just Good Game News, which is taken from the Just Good Game Show over on Patreon, over on podcast feeds, but you can get early access over on the Patreon if you're a monthly pledger. By the time this video goes out, all of the news will have got out there on the social medias, will have got out there. Overall, yes, I have left What Culture. I have stopped being head of gaming over on What Culture because I thought, why not try a solo endeavor? I've always wanted to do a bit of a positive news show over the years, and this is my excuse to do exactly that, to lead with community discussions, in-depth topics, occasionally spoiler-based things over on the show itself. Lots of questions, lots of talking points, occasional spoilers. I want to highlight some overlooked games, make a place where we can all go across the week, and specifically on a Friday for the news portion of it, to just enjoy the industry that a lot of us grew up loving in the first place. But for this particular news portion of the show that I'm separating out and putting out every Friday, we're going to be focusing on overlooked games, money-saving stuff, positive news stories, things that you might have missed across the week itself, and just loading you up with all sorts of good stuff going into the weekend so we can break down the news. And if you want the rest of the show, it's over on Patreon. Please go check out the various different tiers that are available there, and you can get stuck into the bigger show itself. That's available first for patrons. Early access is over there if you pledge that particular amount, and then it's available on the free feeds a few days later. Hopefully combined, you've got the Just Good Game Show and the Just Good Game News, and we're gonna have a lovely time. First off, though, just genuinely a massive, massive thank you if you're watching me at all and you're listening to me blabbering on. I appreciate you. I see you. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this stuff. The eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that I left my notes there, but I'm editing this. I'm learning all the video editing tricks. So by the time this gets edited together, this will be what's here for the most part. You know, trying to look professional over in this new place, trying to make things look very nice. So I've got sound foam and everything, quality levels. So the first thing that I want to get into is the leaked Nintendo Direct. This came from Nate the Hate, the guy that, you know, over the years has leaked quite a lot of different things, but most recently, and especially, you know, this year, leaked the reveal trailer of the Nintendo Switch 2. I feel like that really put him on the map as like, look, you're getting out there saying this thing's going to happen, and then if it doesn't, we're never going to believe you again. But he was bang on the money earlier in the year, back in January, and since then, pretty much anything this guy has said is going to be happening has then happened, and the most recent thing that he's been talking about is a Nintendo Direct, but the caveat is that it's not going to be announced by Nintendo until after Donkey Kong Bonanza releases. Now that's on the 17th, so that's probably already going to be out by the time you're watching this, but still, that idea of putting out a Nintendo Direct to remind everybody of just whatever else is coming to Switch 2 is an interesting proposition, being that we've already got Mario Kart World, and then we'll have Donkey Kong Bonanza, and later in the year we've got Metroid Prime 4, but other than that, we don't necessarily have that many things penciled in, especially in the first party, which goes alongside another conversation, another rumor that's doing the rounds, where a whole bunch of third parties, the Capcoms, the Segas, those people are apparently just waiting to dump a bunch of games onto the Switch 2. I would look to this Nintendo Direct as to an indicator of what's going to be happening with third party, and maybe the likes of the Onimushas, or maybe even something like a Gears of War Reloaded, which has made its way to PlayStation, would then appear on Switch. We've seen Xbox and Nintendo, you know, have a bit of a handshake agreement over the years, and I wouldn't be surprised, considering just how much money Microsoft/Xbox needs to make up, that they don't then start putting Gears and Forza, and maybe even Halo, on the Switch too. Next item down, you might remember Ken Levine. Remember him? The dude that did BioShock, the dude that brought us System Shock as well back in the day. I feel like System Shock is back in the news because of the remaster of System Shock 2, but Ken Levine's most recent game, and it is recent in brackets, is Judas, something that was announced like 10 years ago as the follow-up to BioShock Infinite. It caused a whole bunch of ructions because Levine broke away from working at Irrational and formed a whole new studio using a handful of different staff members that he'd been working with previously to set up a new developer and start working on this game called Judas. Now, this was rumored to be, for the longest time, a narrative building block game, a whole new way of experiencing a narrative in a video game, and it seems like that's the thing that has delayed the game over and over and over again. Ken Levine actually did an interview over on Colin Moriarty's Sacred Symbols podcast where he talked about, you know, he is a perfectionist. He's like, look, we have entire systems that we started to work on for this game, and they weren't coming together, so I had to throw them out. I had to start again. I had to go again. Your mileage may vary on how much you enjoy enjoy that approach to design, but if anyone has the money to be able to do that, it is Ken Levine. It is Mr. BioShock. However, the most recent news point worth highlighting is Ken Levine getting out there saying that Judas is an old school game, that he's not interested in live service elements, overly monetized components, etc., which it's just worth throwing in as a bit of a breath of fresh air. This is a game that has been in development for so long and is still under the publisher 2K, who are known for being, monetizing the living hell out of their NBA games and the WWE games. It would make sense on a publisher level, on a trickle-down monetary level, to be like, hey, can we get some sort of recurrent spending method in there? And Levine just got out ahead of all that stuff and said, look, it's not going to be that. It is going to be an old school game where you're getting the whole thing for a certain price tag, and that's that. Again, though, Judas, they've barely shown it off. We had a couple of gameplay clips across the last few years, and it very much looks like another BioShock, which maybe that is the rarefied air that it'll sell itself. There is another BioShock coming as well, if people aren't already aware of that. The next BioShock has leaked a few times over. Apparently it's based on the book A Tale of Two Cities, and apparently it's all going to be centered on two different cities that are on top of each other. And the class divides, the warring divides that happen between the two. So going forward, we will be getting Judas and we will be getting BioShock. At least as far as Levine's concerned, dude's just making a video game. He's not making an infinitely monetizable service that would suck all the BioShock fans in. Next up, and sometimes I will cover the newest games here as I figure out the overall structure of this particular show, but Donkey Kong Bonanza is out. I've been playing it for the last couple of weeks. Shout out to Nintendo's PR for being absolutely lovely. When I got in touch with them and said, hey, I'm going to be moving on from What Culture. Can I still please keep in touch with you guys and hopefully still get access to games? And they said, no worries, we got you. Hey, banana, here is Donkey Kong Bonanza, which absolutely rules. So I've had access to that game for a couple of weeks. The game is finally out. The review for it is actually over on the What Culture channel because I recorded that before all this stuff got out there. So you can go watch that over there. I absolutely loved it. I think that it's incredibly inventive when it comes to the ways that you explore the 3D environment. That idea of just punching through everything, something that the likes of Red Faction did way back in the day with its geomod technology. But you are playing a version of Donkey Kong that kind of just feels like the Hulk, from Hulk Ultimate Destruction, just ripping through everything, tearing everything apart. It's a very, very fun game, and I really enjoyed it. So I want to shout out that DK Bonanza is out and is an awesome showcase of what the Switch 2 can do. I am throwing it in though because a news story that's done the rounds from IGN is a trademark being filed for a Donkey Kong movie. It's an untitled Donkey Kong project or whatever the hell they're calling it. It doesn't have a specific title yet, but assumedly it would be in the ongoing, Illumination Super Mario universe. The universe that kicked off a couple of years ago, where you've got, Chris Pratt's Mario and Seth Rogen's Donkey Kong. And it speaks, at least to me, of an overall push for Donkey Kong to be a bigger deal. I mentioned this in the DK Bonanza review, but when you look into the making of Donkey Kong Bonanza, it did come from an executive within Nintendo saying, hey, we should elevate Donkey Kong. We should have a gameplay style, a general feel to 3D Donkey Kong games that lets them, put Donkey Kong up there with the Marios, with the Kirbys, with the Zeldas, with the Splatoons, or whatever, so you know what you're getting into in a 3D space. Now, there hasn't been a 3D Donkey Kong in terms of any open space exploration game since like DK64. Like most of the 2000s games were the Jungle Beat games, they were rhythm games. We then got Tropical Freeze and Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, across the 2010s, and the remaster was very recent. So it is quite an untapped thing. And that's my overall takeaway, biggest positive with Bonanza is just how much they make Donkey Kong gameplay feel like a signature thing. It's just a really, really cool idea. And I love how much they elevate that. So I feel like overall there is this push from Nintendo to be like, we should elevate Donkey Kong, whether that is doing the new Donkey Kong expansion to the theme parks over in Japan. And I think they've done the American one by now as well. Or, like filing the patent for this movie to come out. Or just leading with, the Donkey Kong Country Returns HD remaster that was put out on Switch. And that game also got a sale really soon. Like, Nintendo never put their games on sale. And I feel like they were just saying, can we just get Donkey Kong in front of people? Can we get you guys enjoying this game and enjoying this gameplay? Now, I do think that 2D Donkey Kong and that Country remaster is way too hard for the average person. I think there's a lot of gotcha elements in those levels, bits where you're just having a nice time flying through the level and all of a sudden you've been hit by something or you fall down a pit or you get hit by an enemy or whatever it is. Nowhere near as palatable and immediate and satisfying as Bonanza is. And I wonder if DK Bonanza will be the thing that kicks off this Donkey Kong revolution. Dude's been around for like 50 years or whatever it is, 40 years. in gaming, but we don't have that many, if any, seminal titles to hold up, other than, Donkey Kong Country way back on the Super Nintendo. So it's been a long time, and especially in the 3D space, you can argue it's never been done. DK64 was awesome for its time, but that thing has barely been put out in front of people, and I feel like the DK rap has aged better than the game itself. So it is interesting thinking about Nintendo's handling of Donkey Kong. If you've been a fan of the character since the beginning, or you're just a fan overall, like I had the originals on the Game Boy, it's awesome to see this stuff, and we're in theory getting a Seth Rogen main Donkey Kong movie at some point in the future, which I'm never going to not enjoy that sentence. Another game that I want to highlight is Ready or Not, something that's been in early access since like 2021 over on the PC, over on Steam. This game is finally out on consoles. I was lucky enough to get a code through, so very much thank you to the PR for sending that across. If you don't know what this is, and you might have seen it on the PlayStation Network's search bar thing whenever they show games that are trending, Ready or Not has been trending for like 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the game's launch, and it's pretty awesome. Like, I've only done the first couple of levels. Ewan and Josh have played a hell of a lot more than me over on What Culture, and me and Ewan did do a video on it on the channel as well. That was before I'd played it, Ewan had. But this is very much a return to the old school Rainbow Six games, or the old school Ghost Recon games. It is a tactical shooter. It's a first person shooter. You're going down in a couple of hits. You are planning every single beat of getting into a location, taking out the terrorists, taking out the criminals one by one, watching all your sight lines. You can play it online. There's a multiplayer mode, there's a co-op mode, but there's also this single player offline commander mode where you're given a squad of SWAT dudes that you can control, and it's just really sweet. Like, you have this whole thing where you can tell them to like hunch up on a door, breach and clear, throw the flashbangs in, tell them exactly where you want them to go. You can queue up different commands and execute them at the same time. Also, all while you get in different positions, so you can flank different rooms in different ways. You can also turn on tactical cameras so you can see what they see as they run in. It's all very realistic and very well done. And the gameplay, the sound design is impeccable, but the gameplay itself is incredibly, like I said, brutal. And there are different difficulty options for it, but they're very much reminding you of what it felt like to go through those old Rainbow Six games. Like, I'm a huge Vegas fan, Vegas and Vegas 2. But even older than that, like, that's sort of, you get one part of this wrong and your whole squad goes down. Like, you need to be making sure you are picking your spots. I think that's really, really cool. The game does have a little bit of controversy around different bits of content that the developers have patched. There was some instances of nudity, of different bits of violence, different portrayals of just different things that they've had to patch out to try to get the game on consoles, where maybe it was a bit more open-ended, let's say, on Steam, but still, gameplay is king, and it very much is the case here. If you yearn for that style of old school Tom Clancy, it's bang on. And I'm not sponsored by it whatsoever, especially on this channel. But I just think it was such a breath of fresh air. And I think when you look at how Ubisoft have used the Tom Clancy IP, the most recent thing on their side was X-Defiant. It is worth just saying that other developers can do this. You don't need the IP, you don't need the branding when it plays this well. So shout out to Ready or Not. That it is quite a complex game. There are a lot of different ways that you can, infiltrate a space and, take on the enemies, and all these different ways that you can even just hold your gun, which is really cool, and the different tools that you have available to you so you can look into a room before you go in. I'm hoping that because this game is doing so well, like, it is a massive, viral sensation. Like I said, it's been trending for weeks, even before it came out. I hope that further proves to Ubisoft that there is a market for super serious Tom Clancy style games. Like, there's meant to be this Splinter Cell remaster, so get that thing out. Make the Vegas games, port them across to other consoles, remind people what this gameplay feels like. Because even those franchises, Rainbow Six Siege has always done really well, but Ghost Recon just largely died off once they started doing Future Soldier. They started making it a bit easier to take out different enemies all at once. Like, you're marking 4 guys and taking them all out at once. I feel like the grit and the planning side of it just kind of went out the window. But a lot of us will remember, playing something like an Advanced Warfighter back on 360 and just how that felt to move through a level. And I feel like that overall pace is just missing from the modern first-person shooter space. It just feels good. It feels like it's a worthwhile part of the industry that has been missing for way too long. Another section that I'm throwing in, and I will start getting specific orders for these things as the show comes together, is tips and tricks. I used to do all sorts of tips and tricks the game doesn't tell you for, various new releases and whatever. And whilst I figure out how to, manage my time and put these different shows out and all the Patreon stuff and everything else, I should probably look after my son at some point as well. He exists somewhere in this house. But I wanted to do a tips and tricks section for the Just Good Game show, for the Just Good Game news, where I just highlight a fun tip for a game that hopefully you're all playing, or a sizable portion of you are playing, which is to say that today's tip, this week's tip/trick, is for Death Stranding 2. Now, shout out to Brad Shoemaker over on the Nextlander podcast who highlighted this as well. But if you throw down a blood grenade in Death Stranding 2 and then fire bullets through it, they become the multi-purpose bullets that take out the BTs. Now, I know that that's a lot of nomenclature, a lot of nouns, a lot of terminology that won't make a whole lot of sense to anyone not playing Death Stranding. But if you are, you probably just went, oh, which is exactly what I did when I heard him mention it as well. So shout out to that tip/trick, and shout out to the Nextlander podcast. That thing is awesome. It's headed up by Brad Shoemaker, Vinny Caravella, Alex Navarro, who used to work for Giant Bomb. And I just thought that was a worthwhile tip to get out there. So if you're fighting the BTs in Death Stranding and you need some multi-purpose bullets to put them down, throw a blood grenade down and just fire right through it. As we go, there'll be various different sections to the show. There'll be some news, there'll be some tips and tricks. I want to highlight an overlooked game of the week. I want to highlight also some deals and some money-saving tips as well. I'll figure out the order. We'll figure this thing out collectively as the community comes together over on the Discord, and as I do more of these. This is very much episode 0 for this thing, just because I wanted to get something out there. I wanted to be able to have some footage to play with and learn how to edit and put this thing together. So I do apologize if bits and pieces of what you're about to listen to or watch feel a little bit too outdated. It's simply just because I wanted to have as much pre-recorded as possible before I went live, to have things for people to see. When they go on the Patreon, they go on the YouTube channels, there are things for you to see. I didn't want to just launch just the Patreon and be like, hey, consider pledging towards me, or consider subscribing or whatever, and not be able to show you what it's going to be like. So like I said, this is very much an episode 0, but still, it's one of those things that I want to figure out going forward, even though I know the different beats that I want to hit. It's all gonna have to come together in the edit. So we will see, but I know that there are different bits to this, and I want to make sure that they all sit together properly. Next up, let's talk about the overlooked game of the week, or in this game's case, the overlooked game of the last year or so, Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden. I noticed this dropped on PlayStation Plus, so if you have PlayStation Plus subscription, you can go and grab it as part of your monthly games. I just wanted to shout it out. I feel like the developers Dontnod, they're known for the Life is Strange series, and I feel like most of their more action-oriented stuff just gets completely overlooked, whether that is Vampire, that I thought was a really awesome concept for a game. The combat was a little bit waning, but I know that they patched it quite a lot since 2018, but Vampire is a really great game with excellent voice acting and a really great concept of a doctor who becomes a vampire, and it's on you to choose whether you actually want to, take out your patients by just sucking their blood and getting the different abilities and power-ups and stuff from that, or whether you want to stick to your Hippocratic oath and actually save people or not. And the more you restore someone and take care of them, the more they are then worth if you decide to kill them. That's very much the tip of the iceberg for the story in that game, but I thought it was just such a great game overall, and Dr. Jonathan Reed is a great main character over on Vampire. And so yeah, that was one of the things where I realized Dontnod were trying other stuff. And also last month, Jusant was a PlayStation Plus game, which you might have grabbed. Hopefully it was on Game Pass as well last year when it first came out. That is a really cool game where it feels inspired by Death Stranding, but it's very much about climbing, the physics of climbing, kind of like the Ken game that's coming out later this year. You're picking your spots, you're trying to get up this cliffside, but there's a nice little story alongside it, and that's a Dontnod game as well. So like I said, as much as they're known for multiple choice narrative driven games where you're exploring a character, a set of characters or whatever, they have this action side to them as well, whether it came through Vampire, the originality of Jusant, or Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden, which came out last year and is a bit of a hybrid of the two. Like, same as in Vampire, there are a lot of conversations, there's a lot of dialogue in Banisher's, but the gameplay is also super solid. It feels a little bit like God of War 2018, camera over the shoulder, lots of interacting, lots of locking onto an enemy, dancing around them, doing different moves and stuff. The thing that blew me away was the production value in terms of the voice acting, the general atmosphere, the immersion. It's just a really, really cool game. And I feel like across the last couple of years, there have been so many high budget games that sometimes it's easy for the AA stuff to be overlooked. And Banisher's Ghost of New Eden was very much the best aspect of Dontnod's little sort of side wing of action-focused games. I feel like it's the best playing game that they've got in terms of just raw gameplay stuff. And I thought the story, the characters, like I said, the immersion, the setting of New England, I loved all that stuff. The sound design, the music, the soundtrack, just a gorgeous, gorgeous game. If you're looking for something else to just give a shot and see if the story clicks with you, see if the characters click with you, I would recommend that. Speaking of overlooked games, my next segment is insane deals. I'm going to highlight 3 different games each week, things that I've played through, things that I think are very much worth your time. The first of which is Sayonara Wild Hearts. That's currently on sale over on PlayStation for like £4.79. That's obviously UK money. And it's on sale until the end of the month, until the 30th of July. But Sayonara Wild Hearts is an absolutely gorgeous game. I'm going to gush about all these games because there's so much stuff that I just want to celebrate and go, hey man, you should look at this thing. It's awesome and it's very much worth a $5. But yeah, Sayonara Wild Hearts is kind of like an interactive album. Absolutely gorgeous music from Daniel Olson and Jonathan Eng. And it's one of those things where, you know, you're not doing that much gameplay wise. It is all just timing based. It's all about the visuals and the thumping soundtrack and just getting through this really great mix of like synth beats, occasionally sort of anthemic rock, tonalities to it. But you are playing this interactive. It tends to be like one giant music video that goes alongside the music itself, and it is all about this individual going through what feels like a breakup, and then having all that be visualized and played out with like martial arts and bike chases and a mech fight and all this over the top stuff that can represent all the different parts of this person's psyche as they go through this thought process. Very much out there, but I loved it and I cannot recommend it enough. If any part of you like synthwave music or synth pop or just good beats, it absolutely rules. Now, it would have been at the start of this year, maybe the end of last year, it did get a next-gen upgrade as well. So on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, it runs at 4K 120. And you put that with the music, you get a good set of headphones. It is one of the best experiences you can have. The game is only like an hour long. Like I said, it's like a playable album. It's pretty much like you're just going through everything in the right order. And every few years, I go back through it again. I cannot recommend it enough in terms of just a pure auditory visual experience. It is absolutely stellar. And like right now, like I said, it's on sale for less than £5. The next one I want to highlight is A Short Hike that is on sale in the UK, at least for £3.56. That also runs out at the end of the month on the PlayStation Store. And A Short Hike is almost exactly what it sounds like. It plays on 3D platformer tropes. You're playing as a little small bird that's just on holiday with I think it's their grandma or their nan or their auntie or someone. And you're just waiting for food to be ready that night. And your auntie's like, hey, why don't you go explore the island that we're on? And then it's up to you how much you want to do and when you want to call, the end of the game. You are trying to get to the summit of the mountain of the island that you're on to try and make a phone call. But other than that, it's on you who you want to talk to. There are all sorts of different mini games to get stuck into. There are little things as well, like driving a boat. You can take a dude's boat out on the water. It just, it reminds me of childhood holidays and the ways that you indulge in your imagination when you're a kid, when you're spending time on a kid's holiday, or you're a kid on holiday with your parents or whatever. And I think it nails that feeling. And there's a very well hidden amount of emotion to it once you realize what that phone call is when you get up to the summit of the mountain itself. I just think it's extremely well handled. Now, the game, its default graphics setting is meant to look like a PS1 game, and I think that did put a few people off when it first launched. You can go in the settings and clean it up a little bit if you don't want the standard, CRT filters and old school graphics and whatever. If you would like it to be a bit cleaner, you can do that. But I do find it to be extremely well playing, and there's a lot of verticality to it. You are finding these different feathers around the island that give you more stamina, which means you can climb even higher before you get to the top of the mountain. But yeah, it is very much a short hike. It's not going to be very long. You are very much indulging in what it's like to be this kid, on this island, just all the different mini games and exploration things. I think it's a very, very sweet, extremely well playing game. And for that amount of money, it is an absolute steal. The last one down is Sable. That is on sale for £7. Now, Sable launched incredibly broken. I played it back on Xbox, would have been in like 2022 or something. But it was so good, even back then, that I still played it through to completion, even though the frame rate was absolute dog. Thankfully, it's been patched now, and is very much worth your time. It is a little bit like A Short Hike in terms of the general story being you are playing as this person who is undergoing a pilgrimage, who is choosing to go out into the world. You're part of this sort of nomadic tribe, and you've come of age, you need to go out into the open world, and you need to do a certain thing that would prove your maturity, and then return to the tribe whenever you're ready. And that is on you as a player to decide when you're ready, which I think is a really cool idea, because then it puts the exploration onus on you to be like, when do you feel like you've seen enough of that open world and seen enough things to bring home. The art style is absolutely gorgeous, really cool cel-shaded look, which I feel like we hardly ever get cel-shaded games now. Shout out to Taz Wanted and Cell Damage back in the day. But yeah, it's another game a little bit like a short hike, where it's just, you are just indulging in this open space. And Sable has a like a vehicle mechanic to it as well. You are upgrading this floating bike thing that you have access to, and it's a very much a chill game. There's not any combat in it. It is about exploration. It is about floating and gliding between all these different ruins in this open world. Like I said, exploring, finding what's been there before, thinking about the different civilizations that were there before in your own agency, in the tribe, in the world itself. Very, very cool game. Very, very cool idea. If you like the likes of Journey, and the feel of exploring the world in Journey, I think it's right up your alley. And like I said, it's on sale as well. All three of these games are only on sale until the end of the month, but all three are very much worth your time if you like the sound of what I'm describing. Last of all, some weekly trivia. I want to tell you a cool thing every week. Now, I touched on this a little bit when I was talking about DK Bonanza early on. IGN had a really cool write-up on this, that idea of, how Donkey Kong Bonanza came together. It was a Nintendo executive, Yoshiaki Koizumi, who was the director of Donkey Kong Jungle Beat way back in like 2004. It was him who apparently went to the Mario Odyssey team after Odyssey had shipped and said, hey, can we do another Donkey Kong game? And it was his idea to do that stuff. And apparently the Odyssey team then went over to Shigeru Miyamoto, obviously the creator of Donkey Kong, and had conversations with him about what Donkey Kong's power set might be, his abilities might be. And from there, apparently one of the Odyssey team was already playing with the idea of destructible environments, destructible voxels, overall in 3D environments. Mario Odyssey has a little bit of this in some of the snowier levels, and I think they mention it's in the Luncheon Kingdom level as well, where you're punching through parts of the environment. It was that exact idea from that exact coder that then matched up with the conversation that the team had with Miyamoto, talking about the destructibility, the general power that Donkey Kong has, which then became the destructible gameplay that's in Donkey Kong Bonanza. So I love that progression. I love little dev stories every now and then when we get them. And I think that's a fun little kind of happenstance thing that the team already had a general idea that then perfectly matched up with this idea of a Donkey Kong game. So yeah, it is just one of those cool little dev stories that whenever they pop up, I will share them with you because I love this stuff. Speaking of loving this stuff, let me know what you think down in the comments below. This will be on YouTube. Like I said, the full show is over on Patreon. The Just Good Game show is over on Patreon. You can get involved in the Discord. You can submit topics to be talked about. There's the whole community thing over there. If you've been watching me on What Culture over the years and listening on the podcast side of things, then we've had the Untitled Banter podcast that myself and Jules started back in 2020 or whatever it was. I've always loved having people's thoughts and talking points, etc. I loved building the show around that, and going forward with the Just Good Game stuff, I want to do as much of that as possible, whether that is just talking to you over on Discord, doing the big, Just Good Game show every week, separating out the news points. Maybe there's something else that people have highlighted over in the Discord, or something else that I can research and then present to you in this video. I'm loving doing this stuff. I always have. I've been doing this stuff professionally for over a decade, and I've been playing games my entire life. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Just Good Game News, taken from the Just Good Game show. Hopefully I'll see you over on Patreon, and if not, I'll see you next week.